Okay, I'll start. I was working for an IT company in the south of France. I'm originally from the UK, Yorkshire, if anyone knows where that is. I had a mission to go to Alaska, USA, in Homer, Alaska, and I had to go through from Nice to Frankfurt to Dallas, I think it was, and we had a layover, and well, I sort of end up in getting something to eat in the airport, and that's when I met my wife, Rosemary. Now, the reason why I met my wife, Rosemary, was because I had the first iPhone. So, the very first iPhone in Europe, and I put it on the bar, and I got carded on the bar, which in Europe is very unusual. You just don't do that. And I got carded, and I said, "Oh, that's so funny," sort of thing. And my wife said to me, she sort of giggled a little bit, and we got talking, and I'll pass this over to Rosemary then.
Okay, well, it was Seattle.
Seattle, close.
Yeah.
It was a state.
Sometimes, details. I mean, the main details are all good. So, so we had a layover and there was an ice storm. So planes weren't taking off. So we were kind of stuck. Everybody was kind of stuck there for a little while. Both my daughters played competitive volleyball. And so we were flying through, the team had flown through Salt Lake, and me and two other moms were flying through Seattle. And so we got stuck. And I got hungry, so I went to go get something to eat, and I had my phone sitting out there, and he said, how do you like your iPhone? And I was like, fine, because I had one for a long time, but he had just gotten his. So, well, I said I better go back to the gate and check and make sure and see where the flight status was. So we walked back. He said, I'll walk you back to your gate, and so we walked back there, and then they were still waiting, and so we continued to chat.
Around for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then I had to walk onto my gate. So I walked up the ramp. I remember it was ramp.
Yeah.
And I got to the top of the ramp, and I'm thinking, if I don't get a number, then I might regret it. I went back, and I just happened to have a business card from some guy in Japan, and Rosemary give me her number. She was just actually going through the gate. You were almost going through the gate.
I was,
So
lined up to go.
Literally 2 seconds.
And you would have missed each other.
So he asked me if I had a card, which I have a business, so I gave him a card, not really thinking too much other than...
and then I give you my card.
And it was...
pseudo card.
Yeah, he put
his phone number.
His number on the back, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't think too much about it, and I went to the volleyball tournament, and about two... And when we were talking, he did mention that he was going to Australia for a few weeks, and then...
But from there, I went on to Anchorage and to Homer, Alaska to do my work, and then back to France.
It was about 2 or 3 weeks after we got back from the volleyball tournament that he sent me an email, and I mentioned it to the girls. I kind of laughed it off, and I had thrown the card out because I didn't know who this person was. And in his email, it's like, hey, do you remember me? I'm the guy from the airport, blah, blah, blah. And so I mentioned it to my girls. I said, oh, this guy I met in the airport, he emailed me. And my older daughter's friend, Gabby, said, well, let me write him back. Well, at the time, my daughters were trying to set up eHarmony accounts for me.
Oh, okay, awesome.
So I said, no, Gabby, that's fine, I've got it. So I had been to Alaska several times. So I just asked him how his trip was and if he saw any moose. And then we started emailing back and forth. And that went on for about a month or so. And then he asked if he could call me. And I said no. And then he said, he tried again.
I tried again.
On the third time, I said, okay, you can call. So basically I said, okay. So then I remember the call came through and it was international.
Right.
Call, right? So I'm like, okay, well, that part of the story, everything he told me is like, check, right?
Check.
Make sure. So we started talking, and then he always said, well, I'll call you. Don't worry about, I don't want you to have to pay for it. So he would call like every day, and we chat about all different things. And he was traveling quite a bit. So he'd say, well, I'm going to be heading off to, Germany or wherever he was going. So at one point I said, well, I'm surprised you've traveled all over the world. You've never been to San Francisco. It's a great city. If you're ever around, I'll show you around. So he says, well, I've got to go back to Australia to renew my visa.
I was an Australian resident in Australia, so I had to go back and renew it. I had to go to Brisbane, but you have to stay in the country to renew the visa whilst it's being processed. So I said, well, how long's that going to be? Oh, well, it could be 2 or 3 weeks. So I decided that I have a brother who's in Adelaide, Australia, so I thought I would drive down and see him and stay with him. So I stayed down there with my brother, and then going on to and then I said to my wife, do you mind if I come around and see you?
I said, sure, I'll show you around. So,
yeah.
Okay, so I picked him up from the airport. Now I told everybody, like, he didn't meet my daughters. The first couple of people he met are my friends that, I'm like, what do you think? Is he for real? Like, because...
Is it safe to go in there?
Yeah, so he was staying, obviously, at a hotel. He didn't even know where I lived. Didn't come to my house, anything. So I would pick him up, and I would tell, like, my friends, like, first, they met him, and they said, no, I think he's legit, right? And so, like, I would go up to San Francisco and meet with my friend up there, and we'd go, touring around. So we were kind of chaperoned all the time.
Okay, just to make sure that,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. Well, because
you don't know.
He didn't know, So he didn't meet the girls or anything. And so then at the end of, you stayed like a week. And we went all around. We went to Carmel and up to San Francisco, and I really liked it. And then, so we got along really well. And then at the end of the week, he says, oh, before I leave, can I come back like next in about a month or so? And I said, sure, that'd be nice. And so he flew home, and like 2 days later, he says, can I come back this weekend? If you want to, like, it's your flight. Yeah, so he flew back and forth about 15 round trip.
Wow.
In 2 years, and we got married on the same day that we met, 2 years after the day we met. And then we went to Australia on our honeymoon for 2 weeks.
Before that, Rosemary wanted to make sure I was totally legit.
So it was about 6 months after he had come out quite a few times.
Right.
And then he says, well, I'd like you to come out and meet my kids and my family and everything. So we flew out to London. We met with his friend Dave and his girlfriend Nellie, who we still stay in touch with. And they're married now. And we bumped around London, and then from there we met his kids who live south of London, and then we went up and met his mom and dad, and then from there we flew over to France and went to Nice, and I met people he worked with, so everything was checking out. Well, they had the shops in Munich.
Right.
And we were going by the Bulgari shops, and he looked in the window and he said, he saw this ring, he said, now that's a pretty ring. And I said, oh, you really like that? Because believe it or not, I had bought this ring for myself, but it's slightly different. It was 2 bands, and I took it back because I thought I shouldn't buy this. I can't afford it, right? This is when I was single with the kids, and I thought that's too much of a luxury. I can't do that. So it was interesting that he picked the same one. And I said, well, he says, would you like that for your engagement ring? And so I said, well, wait, hold on. So we went in and we sat down and we started talking. But then officially he asked me when we were in Prague, we went for dinner and we, overlooking the Charles Bridge. Okay. Very beautiful. And then then we got the ring on the way back, but before he officially asked me, he talked to the girls.
I remember walking through the bedrooms with Rosemary's daughters and saying, do you mind if I propose to you? To your mother.
Right.
Is that okay? And they said, well, we know already. So I remember Rosemary just sat on the chair there. The kids were around the island in the middle of the kitchen. I went down on one knee.
Yes.
And I said, Rosemary, don't kick me over.
I did.
Yeah, would you marry me?
So 9 years. We're going
9
to have our
years.
10-year anniversary next March 27th, and we're going to go to Tahiti, Bora Bora, in New Zealand for our
Nice.
10th anniversary.
I became a US citizen last year,
Yeah.
January last year. It wasn't too bad an experience, to be honest.
No.
It was much easier than Australia.
And now I might go for dual citizenship in the UK.
UK.
We're
UK.
thinking we might want to invest in a place there, because someday when his kids wed and have children, we'd like to be able to spend
Go
time
back
there
and
as
forth
well.
and spend part-time
Yeah.
there and part-time
Yeah, so
there.
I mean, down the road.
All right. So some people say, and a lot of people say, long distance relationships don't work. We were blessed in that we were able to do this
Right.
through my work. I can work from wherever I need to work. So a lot of people don't have that luxury. If you have a long distance relationship, then and you don't have the facility to be able to do that, to be able to make that travel, then one of you has to give up. One of you has to move.
Right.
Otherwise, it just won't work, because you will end up spending so much time away from each other. In which case, then you lose that connection. Exactly. You wander off. Whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
We were just very lucky in that, as it happens at a time, we just were able to make that connection.
And it worked well for me too, because when he came to visit, it was the focus would be on him coming to visit,
Right.
and then when he would go back to go to work and everything, then I would have time dedicated to my girls who were in high school
Right.
and junior high, and so that was really important that he didn't become just my only priority, because I think so there was times where he would be the priority, but then he would go back and the girls would know that I wasn't kind of abandoning them. And I think one thing too that is something that is a family thing is my grandmother. My grandfather used to like to get up early in the morning, and he was an artist and a builder, and she said, Louie, you can get up whenever you want in the morning, just don't make a virtue out of it. And so he would bring her coffee. She was a big reader, so she would stay in bed and knit or read and just relax. She worked as a nurse during the war, and that was her quiet time. So he would bring in her coffee. Okay, and I remember that as a kid. I'd go in and Grandma would be reading and having her coffee. And so he brought me coffee when we were in France. He went out and brought in croissants, and it was like there was a halo around his.
It's like,
he came walking in, and I woke up, and
Coffee.
the light behind him made him look like he was
Oh, little angel.
and that was my
Croissants
grandmother. Yeah, my grandmother
Okay,
was saying he was a winner. He was a winner.